everyone. I'm Cierra Clark, joined by a special guest today, Grace McWhorter from Yea Alabama and Cover Crimson. But first, make sure you guys visit FANDUEL.com/SECU to join today and get started with $250 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. Grace, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yes, of course. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yes, and so she covers Alabama, and there's a big game this weekend. I know LSU isn't the greatest team right now. They recently fired their coach. They're at 5-3, and Alabama 7-1 right now. But anytime these two play on the field, it gets crazy. So what's the vibe been like around this Alabama program?
Yeah, well, it's one of those things where this rivalry goes back to 1895. So these are two teams and fan bases that are very familiar with each other. And while there have been some changes, of course, you mentioned it, new head coach, different play caller. The common factor, the common word I've heard used to describe this team still, though, is physical and explosive. So there's still a challenge at hand for Alabama, of course. Now, it is in Bryant-Denny Stadium, and they have had a lot of success in LSU, but it does help have an added layer for it to be a home game this coming weekend. But definitely one of those things where there's still a lot of wrinkles to this LSU offense, especially. So the defense will have their task cut out for them, but it's one of those things where no matter, the season, no matter the setting, this is a game that means a lot to both programs.
And what has Coach DeBoer said what has Coach DeBoer said heading into this game, knowing that LSU recently let their coach go? What has his message kind of been like, hey, we can't overlook this team still?
Yeah, and I think that one of the things is that he even mentioned that this rivalry goes back so far, that he is very well versed in what this means. And we saw how the success that Alabama had last season going to Baton Rouge. And there is obviously, an element to this with Brian Kelly not being there. And so I wouldn't say that Alabama is overlooking this LSU team by any means, but he went back and said how physical this team is, how explosive this team is, and how they do have a lot of challenges to contain Garrett Nussmeier. He's one of those quarterbacks that we've seen him have some success. Obviously, this hasn't necessarily been the season that a lot of LSU fans and, media alike have expected in a certain way because of the talent that they do have on this roster. But I would say, the message has been this is a physical LSU team. And LSU is one of those, rivalries that so many people have such fun memories now, kind of going to the fan base about playing these two teams. And, historically, this has been a deciding factor in a lot of ways. Now in the last, couple of years or so, it hasn't really had that feel to it, but it still is, like I said before, whenever these two teams face each other, we're in for a treat.
Yeah, and this LSU team, it seems like this LSU team struggles against mobile quarterbacks. We saw it last year in Baton Rouge when Jalen Milroe from Alabama just ran all over the field. Obviously, he's not there anymore. But this year when LSU played Ole Miss, Trinidad Chambliss ran all over the place. And then Marcel Reed from Texas A&M ran all over the place. And Ty Simpson isn't necessarily known as a dual threat athlete. But what have you seen from him that could maybe show those capabilities of him using his legs more in this game?
Yeah, that was actually a topic of conversation this week where it's one of those things where Ty said himself that's not necessarily his go-to, but he did say it's an underrated element of his game. And so that's something that I would expect to see, just kind of developing that in his wheelhouse, in his skill set. And you mentioned how LSU has struggled with that. That's something that Alabama has struggled with historically, is mobile quarterback. So that's going to be an interesting element to this game. But for Ty, I think it's all about consistency, especially. I had the chance to sit down with Nick Sheridan, quarterbacks coach, yesterday with Yea Alabama. And that was one thing that we talked about. He said there's a laundry list of things that we worked on during the bye week. He couldn't get into everything, of course. We couldn't reveal the secrets. But he said, just being consistent with, what Ty is doing. And we've seen his off-schedule throws be so impressive, but sometimes it's more about doing the easy things correctly. Now, against South Carolina, Alabama won that game in a way that they hadn't had to win before. And so there's a lot of confidence, when you look at Alabama, because time of possession has been huge for them this season. They did not dominate in that facet at all against South Carolina, yet they still found a way to win. And so this bye, having the last, 2 weeks really to prepare for this LSU team, I think it was helpful in a lot of ways, just because even the health too, getting some guys back healthy, going over some things, doing a lot of self-scouting, both offensively and defensively, have definitely taken place.
It's so funny. So I do sideline reporting work on ESPN Plus for Missouri State games.
Yeah.
And a few weeks ago, Missouri State played UT Martin. And as you know, before the game, we do production calls and everything with the head coaches, and their head coach Simpson is Ty's dad. I literally did not even realize that until like last week. I was just talking to a guy. Simpson's a very common last name, and that's Ty Simpson's dad. So Ty Simpson is very much a player, a son of a coach and whatnot. But what's it like covering him? How is he kind of like off the field?
Yeah, no, he's great. And it's been really fun to see his progression as the quarterback. And one thing we learned about him really early on was his relationship with his dad is super, super important to him. And so I remember it was his, first home game in Bryant-Denny, and he comes out to the media scrum, and, we're all waiting there. He's at the podium. And before we get a question, he's like, whoa, wait, what is the score of the UT Martin game? I'm not talking until I know the score of the UT Martin game and see how my dad is doing. And so that's been something that's been really cool to see how their relationship has just been such a priority for Ty. And then who he is off the field. I mean, he is definitely he's a good one. And he is very, very involved in his faith. That is a cornerstone of everything that he does. And he's very vocal about that. And I think that's really cool to see, especially with, this team that's around him. It's very clear that he is beloved by his teammates. And another thing that's really cool to see, and I was talking to Coach Sheridan about this yesterday, is the quarterback room as a whole has been so supportive of Ty. When you look at Keelan Russell and Austin Mack, and that's something that you can't always guarantee. You don't know what the response is going to be. But yesterday, as I was talking to Coach Sheridan, he said, they support Ty, they love Ty. And ultimately, that makes Ty better when you have a quarterback room that is all focused on one thing. And what I will say about this Alabama team, including Ty, and it starts with Ty in a lot of ways, the selflessness that I see so often, whether it's Ty in postgame, really complimenting all of his teammates, never himself. He never accepts praise. He always deflects it back on his teammates. And the way that he's been able to build specific teammates up in that setting has been really, really, really impressive to see.
He seems like a player that's very easy to root for and a very selfless player, like you said. He's also waited his turn, and I just love when players wait their turn to play. We know the transfer portal is huge, and it's no dig on players who enter it and find a new opportunity, but it's just something about working hard and sitting behind the others who maybe played a little bit better and just working hard to get there. And we even saw that with Jalen Milroe waited his turn, or Arch Manning at Texas did that. So that's just really admirable to see.
It is. And it's one of those things that in this day and age, Cierra, it's crazy. The transfer portal and all the different opportunities and things that you can, it's ever changing. And I don't think we're ever going to fully, have a handle on it anytime soon. Maybe we will. I don't know. But it is more and more rare to see a guy like Ty Simpson who, he was a 5-star out of high school. I think a lot of people forget that. 5-star quarterback, and he's on the bench, and yet he stayed, waited his turn. I think that just says a lot about who he is and his love, not only for this team, but for playing for Alabama.
Yeah, because it's such a huge deal playing for the University of Alabama. Kids, not only in the state of Alabama, but across the country, only dream for playing like a school like that. We mentioned this LSU versus Bama rivalry. And this is one of the big ones, especially for LSU, because whenever I talk to LSU fans, they don't really have the same answer when they talk about rivalries. A lot of them hate Alabama, Ole Miss, Texas A&M. And with the 9-game schedule coming for the SEC, which means that there's going to be 3 permanent locked-in opponents for Alabama, and LSU's not on that list. It's Mississippi State, Auburn, and Tennessee. Which is so crazy to me. But what has your take been from the fan base on that new 3-game opponent schedule?
Yeah, well, so this was, a couple months ago now that we got this released. And that was one thing that was said was, wait, where's LSU? LSU's coming. It's just not going to be every single year. And so I think I want to say 2029 is when the next, we can fact check that. But it's not going away entirely, but that was something that was, wait a second, where did LSU go? But when you look at, this different formatting, having Tennessee, LSU, and Auburn all in the same season, that stacks up. That's a lot. Now, technically, I want to say the Mississippi State-Alabama rivalry is more historical in some ways.
I think it has some type of name too. But no disrespect, but it just has to be relevant.
So with that being said, I do think that people are going to miss it being annually played. I feel like it's always this weekend too, the weekend of the 8th. It's actually my mom's birthday. So that's how I remember it pretty easily. But, you obviously can't get rid of the Iron Bowl, of course. Like that has to be locked in. I've had the opportunity to now attend 2 of them because I used to cover Auburn and Bama, which was difficult for more reasons than one. And being from Atlanta, it was like, oh my gosh, you didn't go to Auburn or Alabama, and you're from Georgia. Like, what is going on here? But that game is so incredible, specifically when it's played in Jordan-Hare. Not the same energy in Bryant-Denny, but we all know that there's some spooky things that happens down there in Auburn that weekend. And then third Saturday of October. I mean, that is a great game. I have thoroughly enjoyed the cigar tradition and just so many different elements. And I love the pageantry of college football. And we get to see it firsthand displayed, especially with Alabama's schedule, regardless if LSU is in it or not.
Absolutely. And so now I want to shift gears. Part of my favorite part of the show is kind of getting to know our guests. So,
yeah.
E.G., you said you're from Atlanta. Boston, big sports city, but what team did you grow up rooting for? I know you went to Georgia Southern, right?
Yeah. So I'm a huge Braves fan. I love the Braves. That is my team. And then when it comes to college, I'm a Georgia Southern fan. And it's great because I don't really have a dog in the fight when it comes to the SEC. Obviously, I love and adore Alabama, but my fandom is still with the group of 5 level. In a lot of ways, Cierra, that makes my job a lot easier because when I'm asked, gotta.
What does that stand for?
Get after those academics, of course.
No.
It's an old saying from Irk Russell. So when he was at Georgia, then he went to Georgia Southern. And so there's a lot of, overlap between the two schools. Get after their ass or get after that ass.
I love that. Okay.
It's the moniker, and we put it on absolutely everything, along with Nick Saban's quote about playing Georgia Southern because Alabama had a very infamous game against the option. And I can't remember what year it was, but basically the quote that Nick Saban said about Georgia Southern is still our best-selling t-shirt, and you can find it on different buildings in Statesboro for sure.
That's so funny. And also I was there I went to Florida. So
okay.
I was at the game when Georgia Southern.
Yes.
Before they were at the FBS level.
Yep. Oh yeah. We love that one too.
And so I live in Arkansas. I covered the Razorbacks for years and I went to Florida. So it's not like I went to Ole Miss or Mississippi State. Mm-hmm. So Arkansas fans were cool towards me, loved the Arkansas fan base, but I also covered Arkansas State as well. And so I've noticed kind of a dynamic in Arkansas and Arkansas State. The Hogs are the biggest school in the state of Arkansas. We don't have any professional teams here, but there's a small group of people who went to Arkansas State, and some went to some are Razorback fans as well, but some cannot stand Arkansas. And so they played for the first time this year.
Yep.
And that caused a lot of chatter kind of thing. So is that similar to Georgia Southern where it's like, oh, we do not root for Georgia and we don't?
Honestly, Cierra, I'm going to be honest. I wish more people felt like that.
Really?
I get annoyed with how many people cheer on the Dogs because I'm like, no, we need to show up on Saturdays for Georgia Southern and we need to be in Paulson Stadium. And so like my outlook, especially when it comes to everything that's going on in college football with, scheduling and just the transfer portal and NIL, I have such a heart for the group of 5 because I'm a product of the group of 5. And like, it's so different down there. But I would say there are a small sector that absolutely despises red. But like I said, more people should probably have that energy than they do. There's a few Georgia Southern fans, and I love you guys because if you're a Georgia Southern fan, we're family, that cheer on the Dogs. They claim it as their SEC team. But for me personally, I'm all gotta.
I love that. And has Georgia ever played Georgia Southern?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And they avoid that now. They avoid that in-state scheduling with Georgia Southern. Because Florida saw what happened. I mean, yes. Nebraska saw what happened. In 2022, Scott Frost gets fired after playing Georgia Southern. And so I think, too, like, those games, those out-of-conference games really mean so much to a Georgia Southern because not only are you getting exposure, which now with the transfer portal can be a bad thing if you have a really good player at, specific position, but you also get the opportunity to get paid to travel to a stadium, play in front of a really fun, cool fan base. And then if you win, you come back with a great thing for recruiting, a great paycheck, and it's a good thing for the program. So as we have moved into the 9-game schedule with the SEC, part of me is like, man, like I still want those, out of conference group of 5 games scheduled. And there still is one that will be on the schedule. But still it's like, man, my heart is always going to be in Statesboro.
Who's Georgia Southern's main rival?
We have a few. Georgia State, App State. App State is a big one. We don't like App State. And I had the chance to cover the App State Georgia Southern game in 2022. I was a sideline reporter. It went to double overtime. and Georgia Southern won, and they stormed the field, and Clay Helton, who's still the coach down there, it was his first season. He gave the best quotes here. He the field, the fans are everywhere, and I've got the mic, and I'm getting my camera guy, and I'm trying to find Coach Helton. I was a student at the time, so my background is I'm completely self-taught, and I was 20 years old, like just trying to make a name for myself. I started out as the men's basketball intern at 18, and slowly by senior year, I was ESPN Plus covering the team. And he grabs me and he goes, "Is college football not the greatest thing on earth?" And it was like, it's played all of the time. I'm pretty sure it's the radio intro. Like, it is awesome. And so I will never forget that game, but it was against App State. And that same year, Georgia Southern beat JMU. Kurt Signetti was the coach at the time. And that was crazy because they were 25 in the country and they came to Statesboro and we beat them.
Those are always, like you said, college football is the greatest. It's
the greatest thing on earth.
So much fun. And so how did you get into sports broadcasting? You said you were a men's basketball intern, and so you went to Georgia Southern. How did you make that path? First off, going to GSU and making an intern? So
my story, I actually was going to Ole Miss, and I was going to get my law degree. I had a roommate and everything. And that was what I was going to do. I was graduating high school, and like I said, I was from Atlanta, and I have some ties to Ole Miss. My grandfather went there, and he got his law degree from Ole Miss. And I remember I was watching the Braves game, and Kelsey Wingert was a sideline reporter at the time, and she pops up, and I was like, that's what I want to do. I don't think I want to go to law school. Like, why would I do that? And so, long story short, I ended up changing schools. I mean, I hadn't arrived at Ole Miss, but it was in June, and I decided, okay, just kidding, I'm going to go to Georgia Southern. Both of my parents went to Georgia Southern. My dad played basketball there, and I still don't really know exactly like why I made the decision. For me personally, I know that it was just the Lord's hand in my life, and He was very prevalent that, hey, I need you in Statesboro. And so, because it didn't really make sense as to why I was like doing such a switch up. And so I headed down there and I committed, okay, I'm going to get all of my experience outside the classroom. So my degree is in PR, not really sports related, but as I put it, everyone needs PR, especially athletes. And I can help provide that in the role that I'm in with talking to them and interviewing them. And I basically, and I still am like this, I didn't say no to anything in terms of opportunity. I started off as the men's basketball intern and slowly worked my way up. I had literal phone books from like 1985, and I was going through and seeing like old contacts to build out an alumni database for a reunion that I would plan every year. I made phone calls. I fundraised. I was in the athletic foundation. And so I always tell people can't help you if they don't know what you want to do. And so I was very vocal about like, I want to be a sideline reporter. I want to be a sideline reporter. And so I got in touch with, it was ESPN3 at the time, and then it eventually turned to ESPN Plus. And it sounds a lot more glamorous than it is, guys. Like it was cool, but it was, the in-house production at Georgia Southern. And I actually started color commentating. And so hardest thing I've ever done, but it taught me so much. And if you're watching this and you want to do sideline reporting, like the experience I got doing that is so valuable. And it was during COVID, so they didn't even have sideline reporters. I was a timeout coordinator. So I would sit in an empty arena, because like I said, COVID times. And I had like, I would sit there at the desk. I had like a face shield on because of the times. And I literally, my whole job was to raise my hand when we were back from break so they could commence playing. And I did that my sophomore year. And little by little, like it was just, a lot of hard work. In a lot of ways, I kind of gave up a college experience to do what I was doing. I got paid $400 a semester, and I thought I was so rich. I was like, oh my gosh, $400. Like that is a lot of Chick-fil-A. And then exactly. And so then, I started working with Georgia Southern, the athletic social media, because the girl that ran it was actually an AD Pi. That was my sorority. And she knew what I wanted to do. Again, be vocal about what you want to do. And so it just is one of those things that like little by little by little, I was able to prove myself. And it was on the back end of a lot of hard work. And like I said, I'm completely self-taught because there wasn't really anyone there that was doing it. There wasn't anyone that was doing the social media aspect of being kind of the featured person doing walk and talks, and there wasn't a sideline reporter. So I remember my first game doing sideline, I didn't know how to put on my IFB because I had never done it before. And I'm sitting, I'm sitting in the bathroom like, oh my gosh, okay, like let's just see what happens. And I remember I went home and I sobbed. I called my mom and my dad, and I was like, I thought I wanted to do this. Like, I thought I'd be good at it. Like, what is happening? Like, what is going on? And it took about 3 months. That was in February. And by April, the spring game, I started to fall in love with sideline reporting. And I was like, wait, I think this is something I can do. And so my story is definitely one of, like I said, a lot of hard work, a lot of, being at the right place at the right time. And honestly, just like the Lord's goodness in my life, because for me, this is a way that ultimately it's to bring him glory. And if I'm not doing that, then I don't need to be here at that point. And I pray before every game, like, may others see him and me, and that's it, across the camera.
Amen to that. And I think what's so interesting about this industry is it doesn't really matter. It does matter, but like the bigger school doesn't always necessarily
No.
better. I went to the University of Florida, and I wanted to go to the big school in the state. That's where I'm from, Orlando. And looking back, and I grew up running track and field, and so looking back, I'm like, I wonder how life would have been if I would have maybe went to a Sunbelt school or something.
Yeah.
Played a sport and whatnot. Obviously, you can't change, and when you're 17, you make decisions on whatnot. But it just shows, like, sometimes if the school is a little bit smaller, I feel like you get a lot more hands-on opportunities.
Exactly.
Like, there's more opportunities to do SEC Network Plus, depending on the school. I know University of Arkansas, their journalism program is getting better, but it's not one of the top journalism.
Premier, like Syracuse and
Yeah. And so, or same with Arkansas State, they're actually the better journalism school in the state.
Interesting.
But I've seen so many people been able to do this ESPN Plus stuff for or at Arkansas, I know they let some of the students do the SEC Network Plus, just because, like, there's not a ton of eyes on the program. Rather at Florida, well, Arkansas, there's eyes on the program.
Yeah.
Not like Florida basketball national champions. Heck no, they're not going to let a student on.
And you're not contracted. So that was a big thing, was like, ESPN isn't sending crews to every game down there. And so now it was actually really cool. I got to help start. It's called Gata Productions. And it was actually modeled a lot after the Alabama program, Crimson Tide Productions. And so my senior year, I cannot say enough good things. If you're a student that's watching this, Georgia Southern, please to go just down there and like tell them I sent you. Like they'll know. Tell them I sent you. And we have built out a program where you don't have to start off as a men's basketball intern and going through white pages. You can start learning hands-on things in a way that I wish I would have had when I was a freshman, sophomore, junior. And to be able to help start that under Byron, is who my director was down there, and he's still doing incredible things. It's so rewarding. And like you're saying, the smaller schools, obviously we love the SEC, absolutely. But if you're wanting to break into this industry, it's okay if you don't land at a Georgia, and their journalism program is incredible. It's okay if you don't land at Syracuse. Like, there are still opportunities to be had, but you're going to have to give up something. So kind of like, what is your cost? Do you want to do it on the front end, or do you want to do it on the back end? Like, that's what you kind of have to decide. And so I decided to give it up on the front end. My college experience was really different. Like, I loved college. I'd go back in a heartbeat because I had so much fun, but it was a lot of work, and it was a lot of long hours that no one really saw, and a lot of missing out on certain things. But it's ultimately what led me to be here, which is getting to cover Alabama, which is, the most premier college athletics program arguably ever, and have such access that I wouldn't have received if I, hadn't had my time at Georgia Southern.
And it's so interesting you say that you almost went to Ole Miss, and I think about what you would have gone that route. Who knows? Like, if they have a great journalism program as well, but you're not going to get that side learning experience that you did at Georgia. Right. So, when did you graduate?
I graduated in 2023. So I'm only 24. I'm a little bit of a baby still. But my experience makes up for my age.
Yes, because you were able to do the sideline stuff while you were in undergrad.
Yeah.
And after you graduated, or when graduation hit, how did you find your first job?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I always tell people that you can ask literally 10 people how they got their start in the sports industry, and you're going to get 20 different answers, because everyone is so unique. But basically, this is a long story, but we're going to do like the Cliff Notes. Basically, I went to Auburn to go have a meeting to see if there was like a connection point there, because the AD now at Georgia Southern, his name is Chris Davis, who I love and adore, and Jared Banko, the old AD, actually is now at Auburn. And we kind of arranged a meeting just to see if like there would be anything that would come out of it for my post-grad journey, if you will. And nothing really came out of the meeting. It was fine, but it was like, you're overqualified, but you're also like underqualified in some areas. So we don't really have anything that would fit you, because you don't necessarily be a GA, but great great talking to you, but not a good fit
Mm-hmm.
right now, at least. And so I ended up meeting, his name is Justin Hokanson. He's the On3 reporter at Auburn. And I remember I was watching him live tweet the Tennessee Auburn basketball game. And I was like, that's who I need to know. We were at a restaurant, and that's why it stuck out to me. So he had his laptop up. And I introduced myself to him. And I was like, hey, my name is Emily Grace. I am graduating. This was February. I'm graduating in May. And like, I see you live tweeting this game. You look like someone that is in this business. And so I graduated in May. We stayed in touch a little bit, not really. And I posted my reel everywhere. And he messaged me and he was like, hey, they were at SEC Media Days. He was like, hey, I think I might have something for you. Like, shoot me over your contact information, yada, yada, yada. And I ended up getting my first job off of that. So it really is like all about who you know and being the right place at the right time. And so I graduated in May, like I mentioned like 6 times now, graduated in May. And then by September, my first game was Alabama, Texas in Bryant-Denny Stadium. And I'd never been to Tuscaloosa before. Started work on a Tuesday. So moved to Birmingham on Monday, started work on Tuesday. And then by Saturday, I was in Bryant-Denny. Totally solo, like 40 pounds of equipment, lugging it down the strip, made it happen, and the rest is history.
I love that. It's all like, that is just such like a microcosm, I feel like, of this industry and what I've learned, because e.g. I'm a few years older than you. I graduated in 2017, but what I was like basically beat into my head is like, you got to go to local news, move around markets, and then you'll end up at network, maybe, possibly, who knows? And that's not necessarily the case anymore. You do a lot of stuff through digital streaming networks as well. And also social media is huge, which you've been killing it on social.
Thank you.
And I think that is just a great way because it makes it a lot more accessible to everyone.
Yeah, it's a great point because, for me, honestly, like at times I wish we were still like 20 years ago, where like the social media aspect didn't matter as much. Because I'm gonna be honest here, like it does not naturally come to me. Like it's not something that I kind of took to initially. I have to work at it because you have to build a personal brand now. It's all about this. Like you have to have a following, you have to have some sort of footprint that gets people interested in what you're doing and that makes you more marketable. And so that's something I'm actually trying to work on, especially with like TikTok and like all these things, being very consistent on those apps, because you get exposure and you can also reach different audiences and you don't necessarily have to go the local news route, but I still think there's value in that. So if you're doing that right now, ton of value in that, and you're killing it because you have the live reps that you get. One of my good friends, her name is Paige Riley. She's actually in the Arkansas market in Little Rock. Love her to death. She's local news and she's crushing. She's killing it. And we often have conversations like our paths look very different, but our end goal is the same. And they're like pros and cons to each. But the social media side, yeah, I have to remind myself that this is important and that this is necessary. And it can't all be about, the on-camera game product. We have to also talk about the buildup, how we get there. And people are interested. It's all about the content. And people are interested in it if you film it.
And don't read the comments because sometimes they can get a little crazy.
So my brother, who is wise beyond his years, he is very entrenched in this world. He's not in it professionally, but he just has a good handle on it. And so when I kind of first started, he was like, listen, like I'll be the one that reviews all your comments. Like I'll go through things. You don't have to see any of it because, there's a great kind of, mindset to have that you can get too high on comments and you can get too low. So even if all the comments are great, you can get complacent because if you're reading these random people, just as the random people are saying negative things, random people can say positive things too. And not necessarily saying that's a bad thing, but if you're living and dying by what's being said to you, you can get complacent because you're going to think that you're killing it when you have room to improve, or you're doing a great job, but you just have random people that don't know anything about this business saying things that aren't helpful or aren't constructive.
Exactly. And one more thing before you go. So when you came to Alabama, you were kind of thrown into the wolves, it seems.
Yes. Oh yeah.
In Tuscaloosa. What was your first thought about the University of Alabama? Because by the time you got there, Rush Talk was a huge thing. When you got to Bama, and I'm not sure how the fashion is at like Georgia Southern.
Yeah.
But at Florida, it's pretty hot. We dress nice, but not nearly as nice as Alabama. So when you got to campus for the Alabama game day atmosphere, what were your thoughts?
So I love fashion. That is something about me, guys, like the outfits of the game. Like I love incorporating that into what I do. And so for me, it's always been a draw. My dad is actually in the fashion industry in a weird way. Yeah. And so like that's always been something that like I have just like loved and adored. And so, you know, Bama, obviously growing up in Atlanta, like we knew about Bama. Nick Saban, oh yeah, like it was no surprise. We knew all about that. I think you'd be hard not to with his 17-year run. So I was very familiar with the football program. I was very familiar with the success. I was very familiar with how iconic the script day is and how meaningful it is and how it is the standard. It is, simply put. And that standard has stayed, you know, since Nick Saban retired, now with Kalen DeBoer. But what I didn't necessarily expect was, you know, when you get on campus and like I'm an 80 Pi, or I was an 80 Pi, the Greek life is so, it's just like another level. And I was a recruitment chair. So for 2 years at Southern, I guess I did 3 recruitment cycles, but I was it for 2 years and I loved every minute of it. It's just a different level. And so like the fashion, like I loved it because I was like, yes. And we actually have a little sprinkle of that at Southern, believe it or not, girls. Like we dress to impress. But the impressions were just like the love for Alabama, the tradition, and how I will say the difference for me was like covering both sides of Auburn and Bama, because I got to see like, and living in Alabama, the first question you're asked is, where'd you go to school? Like, do you cheer for Auburn or Bama? Like all the time. There's no other introductory question than that. And so like learning how generational it is here in the state, more so, not necessarily like specific schools, but like as a whole, the generational college football lean is incredible. And like it is why the Iron Bowl is so special, and it's why college football means so much. And then you add the success that Alabama has continuously had, you know, since the dawn of time, and how, like I said, they are the standard. I have loved it. And I also, for me, like I respond really well to like having to be perfect in a way. That sounds really, hear me out, guys. The expectations of Alabama, I love. You have no room for error. That's, I guess, what I'm trying to say with that. You have no room for error. And I learned that really quickly because I covered Nick Saban's last season. And so when you're in that media room and you're asking Nick Saban a question, your only option is to execute.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I got to experience that one season with him, and then the transition to Coach DeBoer. And like, I'm so thankful I got that one season under Coach Saban, because I learned so much in that, you know, short amount of time, just hearing him talk to media and like having to formulate my questions to make sure that they were perfect. And so I've loved it. Like I have so much love for the University of Alabama, and getting to cover such cool things in my short amount of time. Like I'll never be able to thank Georgia Southern or Alabama really enough.
Absolutely. I mean, Alabama demands excellence like Nick Saban. EG, thank you so much for joining me. But first, FanDuel is getting you ready for the NFL season with an offer you don't want to miss. New customers can just bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet $5, and if it wins, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets all across the app. You can build parlays, bet player props, and ride the live lines. Whatever your thing is, FanDuel has you covered. And the only question is, are you ready to play? Visit FanDuel.com/SECU to download the FanDuel app today and get started. EG, thank you again. Where can everyone find you in your work?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm with Yea Alabama and Cover Crimson. We'd love to have you on both platforms. And then my personal social media is MEG_sports on X and on Instagram. MEG, there's a few underscores in there, but just type in MEG. And I usually pop up, and the same thing on TikTok. So I'd love to have you guys there. Post a lot of behind the scenes at Bama, different things, my quick thoughts videos, wrapping up, summing up different press conferences and things like that. I try to give you guys deliverable information that's in the short form, video package, because I know we're all very busy people. So I'd love to have you there.
All right. Well, thank you again, and we'll see you guys next time.